First of all, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Dina.
Let's start from the beginning. You are a Jewish guy from Brooklyn who just won America.
I tell you, Dina, I pinch myself every day. I was just, you're right, a Jewish boy from Brooklyn. All I wanted to be was go on the radio. When I was 5 years old, I dreamed of being on the radio. Other little boys want to be firemen or policemen or doctors. I wanted to be on the radio. And I got a job when I was 22 years old. I broke in Miami. I never thought I'd be seen around the world. But then I had a national radio show, and then CNN, and now I got the internet. And I've done every facet of broadcasting, to television, write books. But I still, inside of me, I'm still a little Jewish boy from Brooklyn.
Before your first air on radio, they told you to change your name because it sounded ethnic.
Yeah.
Didn't it bother you?
I was so nervous. It was my first day on the air. It was May 1st, 1957. I was scared to death. And they called me in. Couldn't sleep all weekend. It was a Monday morning, and I was just so nervous. And the manager of the station said to me, what name are you going to use? And I hadn't thought of it. I said, Larry Zeiger. And he said, that's no good. Now it would be fine. But then, you know, it was too ethnic. People wouldn't know how to spell it. He needed another name. So he had the Miami Herald newspaper open, and there was an ad for King's Wholesale Liquors. And he said, how about Larry King? And I became Larry King. I legally changed it a year later.
All right.
My mother, to her dying day, always when she called me would say, she'd call me on the phone, hello, Larry King. She'd send me cards, you know, on my birthday. Happy birthday, Larry King.
You said once that real journalists has to come with no opinion. Do you think journalists has to influence the politics? And can you credit yourself for
It's changed now. A lot of the media folks now give their opinion. I never thought it was right for a reporter or people asking questions. You can have an opinion in your head, but if you bring your opinion to it, it becomes more an argument, and that's fine if you want to make it an argument. But I never saw myself as that. I saw myself as someone who asked good questions, listened to the answers, and never had an agenda. I never went on the air to embarrass someone or to praise them. All I wanted to do was to entertain. You have to be entertaining. I mean, you could read a dictionary, you know. Yeah, I have to be entertaining, and the guest counts. I wanted to learn about the guests. So if I came with an agenda, a plan, strong opinions, I don't think it worked for me. So a reporter once, Bill Bragg was the editor of the Miami News, and I said, what is a reporter? And he says, a reporter goes to the battlefield, sits on the side, and tells you what's happening.
Despite this lack of agenda, can you credit yourself for some kind of influence on politicians?
I think my influence has been through having the power of a camera that has been seen around the world, and to still have that. So in other words, if someone pays you and gives you a camera and a microphone, radio, television, internet, cable, network, well, that's a power in itself. So it was derived power. I never went on the air and said, vote for President Clinton. I never said that. So I didn't influence you that way. However, if the guests I presented made you like Clinton or not like Clinton, then they affected you. So through me, there was power. There's power in the program. But I never thought that I was powerful. I was made to be powerful by the nature of the business.
Is there anybody you still would like to interview?
I would like to interview Fidel Castro. He's still living. He was the longest head of state in the 20th century, over 60 years. He started a revolution. The world cut him off. They set an embargo against him, tried to invade him. Now, forget your politics. This is an extraordinary man. He's on a tiny little island. He's got a naval base owned by America on his island. There's certain things he can't have. He's supported by a country hundreds of miles away. And he managed to survive and stay alive. So somebody had to like him. And so I'd be very impressed, very interested in talking to someone who has accomplished that, what he did. So when you think about it, forget politics, that he's a communist or whatever. It's an amazing story. He's an amazing story to come down from the hills and run a country for 60. My God, what a story.
Almost like coming from Brooklyn.
Yeah, but I don't run a country.
That's right. What are your relationships with God?
God?
Are you religious?
I'm not religious. I'm Jewish. I'm proud of my Judaism. I love Jewish culture. I love Jewish writers. I love Jewish food. But I never bought the Old Testament. I never liked it. I was bar mitzvahed. But I did that. I have a mezuzah on my door, and I kiss the mezuzah, and I do that out of respect to my mother. But do I believe there's a God looking down on me? No. I believe this is it. I'm married to a devout Mormon who firmly believes that she's going to go somewhere. I've interviewed too many religious leaders to believe in religion. They don't have answers for me. They can't explain. You know, they'll tell me about free will, but there was no free will in the hurricane of Katrina. There was no free will. God could have stopped that. Could have stopped the Holocaust. Could have stopped it. So if there's a God, he's not very good to us. So I don't believe there is anything. But I do believe that religion was started by geniuses who had to deal with death. Let's imagine this, that we certainly evolved, and certainly Darwin is correct. You look at any monkey and you know that we were once monkeys. We come from that, and we started to walk. And the human is the only animal that knows he's going to die. No other animal knows. The dog doesn't know he's going to die, but the human knows it. So one day, a human fell down and he didn't get up. They didn't know what to do with this, the early man. So then he started to smell, so they buried them. And then they started to say, is this it? Is this it? So they had to invent a thing called God. And they invented a thing called religion, which keeps the masses in tow, keeps you hoping. I'm a member of the Jewish race, but not the religion.
Do you enjoy being famous?
95% of the time, yes. But like here, I tried to get into the building today, and 7 different people came over to take pictures and sign autographs. It's very nice to be known. It means you made some sort of impact. But I didn't go into the business to be famous. I went in because I just loved to communicate. And fame was a byproduct. I didn't go in for money. Money was a byproduct. So there's the times that it's annoying is you try to be nice and people stop you and stuff. 95% of the time it's terrific. You get a good table in a restaurant. People take good care of you. You know, you get tickets for the theater. It gives you some clout. It's nice. I'm not going to knock it.
What is the most important factor in order to conversation being successful?
Well, to me, it was to leave my ego at the door. I didn't use the word I. I thought I was irrelevant. I was solely interested in the subject, and the key was listening. The good interviewer listens, and in listening often leads to the next question. And you got to be totally involved in this subject. I can't teach you curiosity. If you're not, for example, if you're interviewing me now, and your mind is thinking about what am I going to eat later, or I got to meet this guy tonight, or you're not a good interviewer. You have to totally focus. You can't think about yesterday's show or tomorrow's show. To be totally in the moment. And I pride myself in this as a broadcaster, 56 years. Always been in the moment. Whatever the moment is, I go to it. And I trust my broadcast instincts. I don't know where that came from. I have good instincts. I know if something's going well. I know if it's not. I know if I have to move it along. I know if I have to interrupt. I don't know where that came from. That was inborn. I always had a sense of pace.
So after all these years, you're still fascinated by human beings, actually?
Human beings fascinate me. All people are interesting. All people have a story. Everyone has a story. And I never met a person who thought they were bad. Every person, no person ever said, I'm a bad person. Criminals, serial killers, despots, evil dictators do not look in the mirror, comb their hair, and say, I'm terrible. They all have a reason for being right.
But still, is there anybody you would not agree to interview?
That's a good question, and the answer probably is no. I would interview anyone.
Anyone?
Now, do I like certain people? Yeah, I don't care so much about soap opera stars, but I care about what motivates them. It's just that what they do doesn't fascinate me. So I certainly rather interview a president than a bathing beauty model. But I would be interested in the bathing beauty model. What's it like to make a good what makes a good model? Is it the model or the suit? See, there's so many things that would enter my mind. So I'm interested in everybody, but some people more than others.
You were married 8 times.
7 times.
7 times, sorry, to 8 women, right?
6 women.
6 women. The internet is
Married
deceiving
one woman
us.
twice.
Okay, if you have to name one reason for this, say, unusual personal life, what is it?
The reason is I never thought of I married because I thought I was in love. I never lived with a woman. I don't think I ever spent a night at a woman's house or have a woman stay with me for a night if I fell in love. So what I loved at 20 is not what I loved at 30. I'm always amazed at people who are married for 60 years. My God, what they had to give up.
You believe in love for 60
The
years?
concessions. You can't love someone for you may say that, but it turns into a friendship or something like this. I needed to be stimulated. And I lived in a world where you didn't live together. People, when I grew up, you got married. I went to Miami, and that was a very fast town. And I met a lot of pretty women. And I was this little Jewish boy from Brooklyn. And I never married a woman who wasn't pretty. And had children. And a great father. And friends. Some of the wives I never keep in touch. I don't hear from them. But 2 of my ex-wives I talk to. And mother of my children I stay in touch with. I'm married now for almost 17 years. A woman is younger than me. We have 2 boys, 14 and 13. She has a son. I have a stepson, and I have 3 grown. I have Chaya, my little Chaya. 1 daughter and the rest boys. But if I'm proud of one thing, I'm proud of fatherhood. And I don't really regret it. I had good times and bad times. I didn't cheat. I didn't run around. I've had arguments in my life. I'm going to be 80. I can't believe I'm going to be 80. I cannot believe it. When I was a kid, I never knew anybody 80 years old. Nobody lived to 80. Nobody. I cannot believe I'm going to be 80 years old.
In Hebrew, they say till 120. Ad 120.
120, my mother used to say in Yiddish. 120, something like that.
You've made more than 50,000 interviews, right?
Maybe close to 60 now.
Maybe 60,000. Can you distinguish some quality, human quality, that is mutual to human beings?
What you want in a great interview is 4 things. If the subject I'm a good interview, I think. I'm a good person to be asked questions. I'm good to be asked to. I'm a good interview subject. The good interview, the interviewee has to have passion for what they do. They have to like what they do. An ability to explain what they do very well. A little bit of a chip on the shoulder, little anger, and a self-deprecating sense of humor. They can laugh at themselves. If you have passion, if you can explain what you do very well, if you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder and can laugh at yourself, you are a great interview. If you're a plumber or an opera star or a president or a bad guy or a good guy or a butcher or a mailman or a doctor, if you've got those things, nobody will change the channel because you're ingratiating.
Have you ever thought of becoming somebody else, not a journalist?
No, I never thought of what I'd do. I never thought I'd be a writer. I wrote many books. I've been in 22 movies. The only thing I haven't done is a play. I haven't acted in a play. So that's the one thing I would like to do, to be in a play.
What role you wanted to play?
I don't know. Probably I would. I'm too old now, but Death of a Salesman, the father in Death of a Salesman, Neil Simon comedies.
Not Shakespeare?
Shakespeare, no. That language has never attracted me. I have some more. Al Pacino is a great friend of mine, and he's a wonderful actor, and he would rather do Shakespeare than anything else. And I asked him why, and he said, because Shakespeare's impossible to do, because he is such a challenge, so that 10 different actors could do 10 different interpretations of Shakespeare. And he gave me an example. To be or not to be. You can ask that many ways. To be or not to be. 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 That is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. So Shakespeare, that's fascinating. Doesn't fascinate me. You know, to me, it's to be or not to be, that is the question.
Your mother was born in Belarus.
Yes, she was.
Did you have anything, you know, any folklore, some culture, Russian?
Well, I would love to. I didn't get. I got to Kazakhstan. I got to Kiev. I got to Moscow. I got to parts of Belarus. But I didn't get to where she lived. I had my origins traced, and the Mormon Church traced it for me, and they do genealogy. And I found out the block she was on. But she came over when she was the youngest of 6 sisters. She was a year old. So my attachment was when I went to Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty, and I saw the family name there. Gitlitz was her name. Her mother came with 6 sisters. She was the baby.
Didn't you acquire this passion to Russian literature or Russian culture or something?
No, I like...
Or it was more Jewish there?
More Jewish than Russian.
Jewish.
My father was from Austria. I'm more Jewish than Russian, but I like the Russian people. The Russians, I like their flavor. I like their enthusiasm. You know, the American servicemen in World War II got along better with the Russians than the British or the French. And astronauts get along very well with cosmonauts. They find a very similar thing. They're very hale and hearty and, well, they like to eat. Russians like to drink more than Americans.
Yeah, more than anyone.
I love the bread.
The bread.
The pumpernickel bread in Russia is to die for. It's the best. The crust and the brown bread. I love pumpernickel bread, and I never tasted it as good as I did in Moscow.
And in Israel, what is your favorite food?
I love everything. I loved everything about Jerusalem. I was only there once. I plan to go back again, but I was with all the leaders. And in fact, I got a cute story. I went, and you know who drove me to the airport?
Bibi Netanyahu.
Correct.
I've made my homework.
He drove me to the airport. He was out of office then. He was former ambassador to UN. I knew him very well in Washington and in New York. Spoke to him last time he came here. And he drove me to the airport.
You interviewed him a lot of times, right?
About 5 or 6.
What can you tell about him?
He's a good interview. Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. He has all those things. He definitely has a chip on his shoulder. Mm-hmm. He's not the funniest guy in the world, but he enjoys a good joke. He can tell you about being prime minister, and he has great passion. And see, something happened to him didn't happen to me. So that's what I try to walk in the other man's shoes. I don't agree with Israel building settlements. And I want to see peace with Palestine. I think the Palestinian people are the only people in the world without a home. I think that's wrong. And a lot of people in Israel agree with me, but Netanyahu is on the right side of things. So I disagree with him, but I like him very much. However, I did not have a brother killed going to save people at Entebbe. He did. So he comes from a different perspective. Remember, Jimmy Carter said to me, when he was negotiating the treaty with Egypt between Menachem Begin and Saddam and Anwar Sadat. Menachem Begin drove him crazy, drove him nuts, crossing the I's, dotting the T's, going back and forth at Camp David, frustrating.
He was very pedantic, right?
And every time he got mad at him, every time Carter told me, every time he thought, wait a minute, I didn't stand and see my mother and father and sister shot down in front of my eyes, in front of Germans. So I understand where he's coming from. I know why he doesn't trust me. Because if I had those circumstances, I wouldn't trust me. Dot every I, cross every T. And that treaty still holds.
Do you accept this common Israeli belief that Israelis are unique, that Jewish people are unique and Israeli people are unique?
Well, I like to think we're unique.
You said we.
Oh, I'm Jewish. I'm very Jewish. Of course, I said I like to think we're unique, but I think it's a little pompous. You know, like we're funnier than other people, we're better than other people. I don't think. It's amazing that we've survived. We put a lot of emphasis on education, but there are a lot of great Italian people too. There's some pretty good writers that weren't Jewish, pretty good actors that weren't Jewish. Some great books have been written by non-Jews. I think everybody is in their own way has something special. For example, the black culture in America is fantastic. The music, the rhythm, the soul, we don't have that. So everybody has a certain place. So rather than being, yeah, we're unique, but blacks are unique, Czechs are unique, Germans are unique, Swiss are unique. Swiss are unique. You know why?
Why?
Nobody dies in war. Their young people grow old. Every other nation's young people die.
That's right.
We send them to a Swiss, nobody dies. They're neutral, so the people grow older. They keep their population. What does that create in them? You know, so I think all people are unique.
Are you a cynical person in some way?
No, I'm naive in many ways, which
Really?
made me a good interviewer. You're a better interviewer if you're stupid, kind of naive. Like, what do you mean? Or why? Or explain that to me. I was always very honest interviewer. If you said a word I didn't understand, I said, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm not afraid to be stupid. Sometimes the less I know, the better. I have interviewed, yesterday I interviewed a nuclear physicist. I interviewed an astrophysicist the other day, the head of the Hayden Planetarium.
It's very hard.
His name is Torrey. Fascinating guy. Name is Tyson. Brilliant, brilliant guy. Studying the stars. I know nothing from the stars. I was captivated. This guy helped me through my own stupidity because I asked such stupid questions as, what do you wonder about when you look at the sky? I look at the sky and what do you wonder about? Life on other planets. You think there's life on other planets? We asked a question I never thought of, but a listener asked the question, was tweeted in. If the Earth stopped revolving for 1 second, what would happen? Everybody would fall off the Earth.
Really?
We are moving now. Listen to this. I'm 80 years old. I just learned this. We are going 800 miles an hour, you and I, right this minute. Everybody is going 800 miles an hour. That's our rate of speed. If we stop for 1 second, we'd all fall off the planet. Unless you were attached to the planet. We'd go flying into space. Every human.
So have you ever been confused during an interview by your interviewee?
Or sometimes, if someone doesn't make sense, I'll always ask, what do you mean? If I'm confused, I ask, what do you mean? I try to get a better explanation. Sometimes it's hard.
I meant more emotionally confused, like that the reaction to your question, maybe naive or a simple question, was much more emotional than you expected. And What do you feel then?
I haven't thought about that much. I ask the best questions I can. Sometimes if it's an emotional subject, if I'm talking to people who've lost a child, if I'm talking to people who've had great loss, that's the hardest interviews, and people are in despair. The hardest interviews are when you're interviewing parents with missing children, which I've had to do in my life. That's the hardest. What can we do to help? We put up your son's picture, but he's gone. As each day goes by, you lose hope. Elizabeth Smart, who went missing in Utah, turned out to be found. But for weeks, we thought she was dead. I spent a lot of time with her parents. What do you ask them?
You said recently that today one can make different kinds of journalism. Are there different kinds of journalism?
I'm doing what I did 56
but
years ago.
The base is...
What, the delivery systems are different. Newspapers are going out, but the internet is in, and the websites. So it's a different kind of print.
Do you think this profession will exist in 20 more years?
More what?
In another 20 years, the profession of journalism, will it exist?
Yeah, but it'll be in different forms. The robots will never be journalists. They'll always be humans, and they'll always be asking questions, but how they'll be delivered. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what the technicians are thinking about, of what we're going to do. I do know this, that there is any news story now. If there's a big story breaks this minute, the whole world knows it in a minute.
If you could change only one thing in the world, what would it be?
Well, it's a hard question. I can't change people's thinking. You know, it's easy to say I would change and have eternal peace, which is, baloney. You know, how could I make? I could change one thing. I'd cure disease. If I could cure cancer or heart, or both. Not having that, I'd ban tobacco. I know that puts a lot of people out of work, but if tobacco disappeared, the world would be better.
Well, if you were not Larry King, would you like Larry King?
Yeah, I would. He's funny. He's a good father, fair husband, great friend. If he's your friend, you've got a friend for life. He's eternally loyal. That's his number one attribute, is loyalty. He's interested in many things. He's easy to be around. My wife would disagree with this, but I say he's damn easy to live with. There anyone, Fina, in the state of Carolina? No, I wanted to go this way.